I am Madison Walker, 28 years old, and 4 months ago, I lost my grandmother to complications from a stroke. The only thing she specifically left me in her will was her antique pearl necklace, a family heirloom that had been passed down through 3 generations of women in our family. 2 weeks ago, I discovered my Aunt Patricia and her daughter Ashley had secretly pawned it to fund Ashley's luxury boutique startup. I was crushed until 3 days ago when I received an unexpected visit from an estate sale coordinator that revealed secrets about my family I never could have imagined. If you are reading this story right now, please let me know where you are from. Hit that upvote button and follow my profile to hear how a simple necklace exposed decades of family deception. My relationship with my grandmother, Eleanor Walker, was the cornerstone of my childhood. Growing up in Portland, Oregon, I spent every weekend at her Victorian house in the historic Irvington district. Grandma Eleanor was a retired librarian who had dedicated 40 years of her life to the Portland Public Library system. She possessed an encyclopedic knowledge of literature and history, but more importantly, she had an uncanny ability to make every person feel heard and valued. Her pearl necklace was not just jewelry, it was a symbol of the strong women in our family. Her mother, my great-grandmother Rose, had received it as a wedding gift in 1925. Rose had passed it to Eleanor on her wedding day in 1952, and Eleanor had always promised it would be mine when the time came. The necklace itself was a masterpiece of Art Deco design, featuring 3 strands of perfectly matched Mikimoto pearls with a diamond and platinum clasp. Beyond its monetary value, estimated at around $25,000, it represented 4 generations of Walker women who had overcome adversity with grace and determination. Eleanor would often let me wear it during our tea parties when I was young, telling me stories about each woman who had worn it before. She spoke of Rose surviving the Great Depression while raising 5 children, of her own struggles as a young widow raising my mother alone after my grandfather died in Vietnam. My mother, Jennifer, had been Eleanor's only child. She died in a car accident when I was 12, leaving me to be raised primarily by my grandmother, while my father, David, threw himself into his work as a cardiac surgeon. Dad meant well, but he processed grief by staying busy, taking on extra shifts at Oregon Health and Science University Hospital, publishing research papers, and attending conferences. It was Eleanor who attended my school plays, helped with homework, and guided me through the turbulent teenage years. The family dynamics shifted dramatically when Dad remarried 5 years after Mom's death. Patricia Brennan was a real estate agent who specialized in high-end properties in Portland's Pearl District. She was ambitious, charming, and completely different from my quiet, bookish mother. With Patricia came her daughter Ashley, who was 3 years older than me and already in college studying fashion design at Parsons in New York. From the beginning, I sensed Patricia viewed me as an obstacle to the perfect family unit she wanted to create with my father. Ashley and I were polar opposites. Where I was introverted and academically focused, pursuing a degree in library science like my grandmother, Ashley was extroverted and image-obsessed. She constantly talked about launching her own fashion line, becoming the next big designer to emerge from Portland's growing fashion scene. Patricia encouraged these dreams with an enthusiasm she never showed for my quieter accomplishments. When I graduated summa cum laude from Lewis and Clark College, Patricia and Ashley were conspicuously absent from the ceremony, claiming they had a crucial fashion show to attend in Los Angeles. Eleanor watched these dynamics with sharp eyes and occasionally sharp words. She never warmed to Patricia, whom she privately referred to as that gold digger, though she was too polite to say so publicly. She worried about my father, seeing how Patricia slowly isolated him from old friends and pushed him toward a more ostentatious lifestyle he had never previously desired. The modest ranch house where I grew up was sold and replaced with a massive contemporary home in Portland Heights with panoramic city views that Patricia insisted was necessary for her real estate image. As Eleanor's health began declining 3 years ago, the family tensions intensified. Patricia suddenly became very interested in Eleanor's Victorian house, repeatedly mentioning how much it would sell for in Portland's hot real estate market. She would arrive at Eleanor's bedside with real estate comparables and renovation ideas, talking about the fortune that could be made by converting it into luxury condos. Eleanor would firmly tell her the house would remain in the family, but Patricia persisted with the tenacity of a practiced salesperson. During Eleanor's final year, I became her primary caregiver. I took family medical leave from my position as a research librarian at Powell's City of Books, Portland's iconic independent bookstore. Dad helped with medical expenses, but his busy surgical schedule meant I handled the day-to-day care. Patricia and Ashley rarely visited, always claiming busy schedules, though Ashley's Instagram showed plenty of time for brunches, shopping trips, and weekend getaways to Bend and the Oregon coast. One afternoon, about 6 months before Eleanor passed, we were sitting in her sunroom overlooking her garden of roses and rhododendrons. She was having one of her good days, mentally sharp despite her physical frailty. She called me over to her antique secretary desk and pulled out a worn leather jewelry box. Inside lay the pearl necklace, gleaming in the afternoon light. "Madison, my dear," she said, her voice still carrying its librarian's precision despite her weakness. "I want to be very clear about something. This necklace is yours. It will be specified in my will, but I want you to know now." Patricia has been making inquiries about my jewelry, particularly this piece. Under no circumstances should it go to anyone but you. Grandma, please don't talk like that, I protested, though I carefully took note of her words. Nonsense, child. I'm 91 years old, and I've had a good run. But I know Patricia's type. I've seen plenty of them over the years. She'll try to get her hands on anything valuable. Mark my words. This necklace belongs to you, the last of the true Walker women. She also mentioned a safety deposit box at First National Bank downtown, giving me the key and making me promise to check it after she was gone. There are some things in there you should know about, she said cryptically. Documents, letters, things I've kept safe over the years. Promise me you'll look through everything carefully. I promised, though at the time I was more concerned with her immediate health than future mysteries. Eleanor passed away 4 months ago on a rainy February morning, fitting weather for Portland's saddest day in my recent memory. The funeral was well attended. Eleanor had touched many lives through her library work and community involvement. Patricia played the part of the grieving family member perfectly, though I noticed her appraising eyes scanning Eleanor's house during the reception, mentally calculating square footage and market value. The will reading took place 2 weeks after the funeral at the offices of Hartwell & Associates, Eleanor's longtime attorneys in downtown Portland. The bulk of Eleanor's estate was straightforward. The house and most of its contents were to be sold, with proceeds divided between several charities Eleanor had supported: the Library Foundation, the Oregon Historical Society, and the Portland Art Museum. She left me $50,000 in cash, her extensive book collection, and specifically the pearl necklace. To my father, she left some family photographs and her father's gold pocket watch. Patricia and Ashley received nothing, which caused Patricia's carefully composed face to twitch with barely suppressed anger. Surely there must be some mistake, Patricia said to Mr. Hartwell, the elderly attorney who had handled Eleanor's affairs for 30 years. As family members, my daughter and I expected to be remembered. Mr. Hartwell peered over his reading glasses with practiced patience. Mrs. Walker was very specific in her instructions, Mrs. Brennan. The will is quite clear and was properly witnessed. There is no mistake. After the reading, Patricia cornered me in the parking garage. Madison, darling, she said, her real estate agent's smile not reaching her eyes. That necklace is really a family piece, isn't it? It should be shared among all the women in the family. Ashley would love to wear it for special occasions. Grandma left it to me specifically, I replied, clutching my purse where I had placed the jewelry box. It's been passed down through the Walker women for generations. But Ashley is a Walker now, too, through marriage, Patricia pressed. Don't you think you're being a bit selfish? Ashley's last name is Brennan, I pointed out, and Grandma's wishes were clear. Patricia's face hardened. We'll see about that. Family is about sharing, Madison. You might want to remember that. Given Patricia's vaguely threatening tone, I decided not to keep the necklace at my apartment in the Belmont district. Instead, I placed it in my own safety deposit box at a different bank from Eleanor's, planning to wear it only for special occasions. I needed time to process my grief before making any decisions about the family heirlooms. Over the next few weeks, I focused on executing Eleanor's final wishes. I spent weekends at her house, sorting through decades of accumulation. The book collection alone was massive, including first editions of Oregon authors like Ken Kesey and Ursula K. Le Guin that would be valuable additions to my own library. I found photographs dating back to the 1890s, letters from relatives I had never heard of, and boxes of Eleanor's meticulous journals spanning 60 years. Patricia kept pressuring me about the necklace, sending texts about how Ashley had a gala coming up where it would be perfect, or how it should be professionally photographed for insurance purposes at a jeweler she recommended. I politely declined every request, growing increasingly suspicious of her motives. My father seemed oblivious to the tension, buried in his work as always. 2 weeks ago, everything came to a head. I had finally summoned the emotional strength to visit Eleanor's safety deposit box at First National Bank. Inside, along with some stock certificates and savings bonds, I found a manila envelope marked, "For Madison. Open only after I'm gone." The envelope contained several documents and a letter in Eleanor's precise handwriting. The letter revealed that Eleanor had hired a private investigator 3 years ago to look into Patricia's background after becoming suspicious of her interest in family assets. The investigation had uncovered that Patricia had been married twice before meeting my father, both times to wealthy older men who had died within 5 years of marriage. While there was nothing criminal proven, the pattern was troubling. More concerning was Ashley's history of failed business ventures funded by her mother's previous husbands, including a failed online jewelry business that had specialized in vintage estate pieces. Eleanor's letter continued, "My dear Madison, I fear Patricia married your father for his money and status. The private investigator found evidence that she has been slowly transferring funds from your father's investment accounts into accounts she controls. I've tried to warn David, but he won't listen, blinded by what he thinks is love. Protect yourself and the family legacy. The necklace must never fall into their hands. It would be sold within days to fund another of Ashley's schemes." I sat in the bank's private viewing room, stunned by these revelations. My hands shook as I read through the private investigator's report, which detailed Patricia's pattern of marrying wealthy men, isolating them from family and friends, and systematically draining their assets. Ashley had been her willing accomplice, using her charm and fashion industry connections to give legitimacy to their schemes. That evening, I decided to check on the necklace, wanting to reassure myself it was safe. But when I arrived at my bank and opened my safety deposit box, it was empty. The necklace was gone. Panic flooded through me as I frantically searched the small metal box, as if the necklace might be hiding in a corner. The bank manager checked their records and showed me that I had apparently accessed the box 3 days earlier, according to their sign-in log. But I had been in Seattle that day for a library conference, with dozens of witnesses and hotel receipts to prove it. Security footage revealed a woman who looked remarkably like me from behind, wearing similar clothes and hairstyle, accessing the box. But the camera angles made it impossible to see her face clearly. The bank manager was apologetic, but insisted that whoever had accessed the box had possessed both the key and had forged my signature convincingly enough to pass inspection. I immediately suspected Patricia and Ashley. The timing was too coincidental, and Ashley had the fashion knowledge to disguise herself effectively. But without proof, I couldn't go to the police. Instead, I confronted them at their house that evening. "My necklace is missing," I announced, walking into their living room where they were sharing a bottle of wine. Patricia's expression was all manufactured concern. "Oh no, Madison, how terrible. Was it stolen?" "You tell me," I said, watching their faces carefully. Ashley didn't even look up from her phone. "Why would we know anything about your necklace? We have our own jewelry. Because you've been pressuring me about it for weeks, and now it mysteriously disappears from a locked safety deposit box." Patricia stood, indignation radiating from every gesture. "How dare you accuse us? We're family! David, come here, please." My father emerged from his study looking tired from a long surgery day. Patricia immediately launched into a tearful performance about how I was making wild accusations, how the grief of losing Eleanor was clearly affecting my judgment. Dad, exhausted and conflict-averse, suggested everyone calm down and that the necklace would surely turn up. "Your daughter is having some kind of breakdown," Patricia said, dabbing at her eyes. "Making paranoid accusations. Maybe she needs professional help." I left, furious and frustrated. Without proof, I was powerless. I spent the next days calling every pawn shop and vintage jewelry dealer in Portland, describing the necklace in detail. I posted in online forums for jewelry collectors, hoping someone might have seen it. But 3-strand Mikimoto pearl necklaces weren't uncommon enough to track easily, and without the specific serial numbers from the clasp, which I hadn't thought to document, finding it seemed impossible. Then, 3 days ago, everything changed. I received a call from Margaret Sinclair, who introduced herself as an estate sale coordinator specializing in high-end jewelry and antiques. She said she had been contacted about appraising and possibly selling a pearl necklace that matched the description I had posted online. The woman who brought it in claimed it was a family piece she'd inherited, Margaret explained. But something seemed off about her story. She didn't know any of the history that usually comes with genuine family heirlooms. When I searched online for similar pieces to establish provenance, I found your posting. My heart raced. "Do you still have it? The necklace?" "I do. I told the woman I needed a week to properly appraise it and research its value. She seemed eager for a quick sale, which raised another red flag. Genuine inherited pieces usually come with some emotional attachment, but she only cared about the money." "Can you describe the woman?" I asked, though I suspected I already knew. Mid-20s, blonde, very fashionably dressed. She mentioned she was opening a boutique in the Pearl District and needed capital, said her name was Ashley Richardson. But when I asked for ID to complete the paperwork, she said she'd forgotten it and would bring it next time. Ashley had used a fake name, but hadn't been smart enough to think through the details. I explained the situation to Margaret, including the theft from my safety deposit box and my grandmother's specific bequest. Margaret was sympathetic and surprisingly helpful. "This happens more often than you'd think," she said. "Family members stealing inherited jewelry is unfortunately common. I'll help you recover it, but we need to be smart about this. If we simply refuse to return it, she might claim I stole it from her. We need proof of your ownership and evidence of her theft." We developed a plan. Margaret would contact Ashley, telling her she had found a buyer willing to pay $30,000 for the necklace, well above its actual value. The buyer would insist on meeting Ashley in person to complete the transaction, wanting to hear the provenance directly from the family member. Ashley, greedy for the inflated price, would hopefully take the bait. The meeting was set for yesterday afternoon at Margaret's office in the Pearl District, ironically just blocks from where Ashley claimed her boutique would be. I arrived early with Mr. Hartwell, Eleanor's attorney, who had brought certified copies of the will specifically bequeathing the necklace to me. We also had a police detective, Janet Morrison, who specialized in theft and fraud cases. She was particularly interested when I mentioned the forged bank signature and the pattern of Patricia's previous marriages. Margaret had set up her conference room with hidden cameras to record the interaction. When Ashley arrived, she was dressed in what I recognized as a $3,000 designer outfit, carrying a $5,000 handbag. Expensive tastes for someone who claimed to need money for a business venture. She strutted in confidently, not noticing me sitting in a corner, partially hidden by a large plant. Margaret introduced the buyer, who was actually another detective in plain clothes. "Miss Richardson," the detective said, using Ashley's fake name. This is a beautiful piece. Can you tell me about its history? I'm very interested in the provenance of items I purchase. Ashley launched into a fabricated story. It belonged to my grandmother, Eleanor Richardson. She was a prominent Portland socialite who collected jewelry. She passed away 6 months ago and left this specifically to me, her favorite granddaughter. The lies flowed easily from her lips. She had changed Eleanor's last name, the time of death, and even Eleanor's profession. She went on to describe fake family gatherings where Eleanor had promised her the necklace, invented stories about wearing it to cotillions and charity galas that never happened. Do you have any documentation? The detective asked. For insurance purposes, you understand. Oh, of course, Ashley said, producing clearly forged documents that purported to be from Eleanor's will, leaving the necklace to Ashley Richardson, my beloved granddaughter. That was all we needed. I stepped out from behind the plant. Hello, Ashley. Her face went white, then red. Madison, what are you doing here? Recovering my stolen property, I said calmly, and listening to you commit fraud. Detective Morrison identified herself, explaining that Ashley was being recorded and that forging legal documents was a felony. Ashley tried to run, but there was nowhere to go. She broke down, alternating between tears and accusations. This is entrapment, she screamed. That necklace should be mine. I deserve it more than you. You're just a librarian. I'm building a fashion empire. With stolen money and stolen jewelry, I pointed out. The detective took Ashley into custody for questioning. She wasn't formally arrested yet, but the evidence was overwhelming. As she was let out, she spat one last vindictive comment. My mother will destroy you for this. But Patricia's threats would prove hollow. That evening, my father called me, his voice shaking with rage I had never heard before. The police had executed a search warrant at the house, finding not only evidence of the necklace theft, but also documentation of Patricia's systematic theft from his investment accounts. She had stolen nearly $200,000 over the past 5 years, funding Ashley's various failed businesses and her own expensive lifestyle. Madison, I'm so sorry, Dad said, sounding broken. Eleanor tried to warn me. You tried to warn me. I was such a fool. You were in love, Dad. She took advantage of that. She's been arrested, he continued. Fraud, theft, forgery. The list goes on. The detective says she might have done this before to her previous husbands. They're reopening those cases. The next morning, I met with Detective Morrison to give my full statement. She revealed that their investigation had uncovered even more than expected. Patricia and Ashley had been running various schemes for years, targeting wealthy older men and their families. The pearl necklace was just their latest attempted theft. Your grandmother was a smart woman, Detective Morrison said. The private investigator she hired documented enough suspicious activity that we've been able to build a strong case. Patricia may be looking at serious prison time. I thought of Eleanor, how she had protected me even after death. Her paranoia about Patricia hadn't been paranoia at all, but well-founded suspicion based on careful observation. Margaret Sinclair returned the necklace to me personally, refusing any finder's fee. Your grandmother sounds like she was an amazing woman, she said. I'm glad I could help restore her legacy to its rightful owner. That evening, I sat in my apartment, holding the necklace up to the light. Each pearl seemed to contain a story. Rose's strength during the Depression, Eleanor's resilience as a young widow, my mother's abbreviated but impactful life, and now my own chapter in this family saga. I thought about the women who had worn these pearls, each facing their own challenges with grace and determination. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. It was Ashley, presumably on bail or borrowing someone's phone from jail. This isn't over. That necklace will be mine. I deleted the message without responding. Ashley could threaten all she wanted, but the truth was now exposed. The necklace was safe, my father's eyes were opened, and justice was being served. A week later, I wore the necklace to a Library Foundation gala, one Eleanor had co-chaired for many years. Several of her old friends recognized it immediately, sharing stories about times they had seen Eleanor wear it. One elderly woman, Mrs. Chen, pulled me aside with tears in her eyes. Your grandmother would be so proud, she said. She worried about you, with Patricia in the picture. But she said you had steel in your spine, just like the Walker women before you. She was right. As I gave my speech that night, announcing a new acquisition fund in Eleanor's name funded partially by the recovered money from Patricia's thefts, I touched the pearls at my throat. They were warm from my skin, almost alive with the memories they carried. The aftermath of the arrests rippled through Portland's social scene. Patricia's real estate license was revoked when her fraudulent activities came to light. Several of her former clients came forward, claiming she had overcharged them or manipulated property values for her own benefit. Ashley's dreams of a fashion boutique were permanently shattered. No investor would touch someone with fraud charges pending. My father filed for divorce immediately, and Patricia didn't contest it, probably hoping for leniency in her criminal case. He moved back to a modest condo near the hospital, similar to how he had lived before Patricia entered our lives. We began having weekly dinners, something we hadn't done since before my mother died. Slowly, we rebuilt the relationship that Patricia had systematically eroded. I feel like I've been asleep for years, Dad told me one evening over Thai food from our favorite food cart. She isolated me from everyone who might have warned me. Your grandmother, my colleagues, old friends. She had a reason why I shouldn't spend time with any of them. That's what predators do, I said gently. They isolate their prey. Your mother would be ashamed of me, he said quietly. No, Dad. Mom would understand that you were lonely and someone took advantage of that. She'd be glad you finally saw the truth. 3 months have passed since that confrontation in Margaret's office. Patricia is awaiting trial on multiple charges, her bail revoked after she attempted to flee to Canada. Ashley took a plea deal, testifying against her mother in exchange for probation and community service. She's now working at a Starbucks in Southeast Portland, a far cry from the fashion empire I've returned to my job at Powell's, finding comfort in the familiar rhythm of books and readers. The necklace sits in a new safety deposit box at a third bank. This one with additional security measures, including biometric scanning. I wear it on special occasions, library fundraisers, book launches, events that Eleanor would have attended. Each time I clasp it around my neck, I feel the weight of my heritage, the strength of the women who came before me. But the most interesting discovery came just last week. While going through more of Eleanor's papers, I found a second letter. One she had hidden inside a hollowed-out book. Appropriately, a first edition of The Maltese Falcon. This letter revealed that Rose, my great-grandmother, had hidden something in the necklace itself. Following Eleanor's detailed instructions, I took the necklace to a jeweler she trusted, an elderly man named Mr. Yamamoto, who had maintained the piece for decades. He showed me how the diamond clasp could be carefully opened to reveal a tiny hidden compartment, something he and Eleanor had discovered years ago, but kept secret. Inside was a small key and a number, 4782. Mr. Yamamoto smiled. Eleanor-san asked me to tell you, when you found this, to check the old safety deposit boxes at First National Bank, the ones from the 1920s that are still in the basement vault. First National Bank's manager was intrigued when I explained the situation. The basement vault contains safety deposit boxes dating back to the bank's founding in 1903. Box 4782 had been paid for in perpetuity by a trust Rose had established, with fees automatically paid yearly. When we opened it, we found stock certificates, original shares in companies like General Electric, Coca-Cola, and Standard Oil, purchased by Rose's father in the 1890s and early 1900s. There were also gold coins, jewelry from the Gilded Age, and a leather journal containing Rose's account of how she had hidden these assets from her alcoholic first husband, keeping them secret to protect her children's future. The bank's financial advisor estimated the current value of the stocks, with decades of splits and dividends, at over $8 million. I sat in that basement vault, surrounded by the tangible evidence of my great-grandmother's foresight and courage. Rose had protected her family's future even when facing her own struggles. Eleanor had preserved that legacy, adding her own protections. And now it had passed to me. The irony wasn't lost on me. Patricia and Ashley had schemed and stolen for a $25,000 necklace, never knowing it held the key to a fortune they could never have imagined. Their greed had blinded them to the real treasure. Not money, but the bonds of family, trust, and love that connected generations of Walker women. I've established a foundation with part of the money, focusing on literacy programs and support for women leaving abusive relationships. Eleanor would have approved, I think. The rest remains invested, waiting for the next generation of Walker women, whether they come through birth, adoption, or choice. Last week, I received a letter from Ashley in prison. She had been transferred to a minimum security facility after her testimony helped convict Patricia. The letter was full of apologies and regrets, claiming she had been manipulated by her mother, that she never meant for things to go so far. She asked for forgiveness and, predictably, for financial help with her legal fees. I didn't respond. Some bridges once burned can't be rebuilt. Some trusts once broken can't be restored. Eleanor taught me that. But I did something else. I visited Patricia in prison, carrying the pearl necklace in my purse. Not to taunt her, but to show her that her schemes had failed, that the Walker legacy remained intact, despite her best efforts to destroy it. Patricia sat across from me in the visiting room, wearing orange instead of her usual designer clothes. Without her expensive makeup and hairstyling, she looked older, harder, more like the con artist she had always been. Come to gloat? She asked bitterly. No, I replied. I came to tell you that Dad is doing well. He's happy again, free from your manipulations, and to show you this. I pulled out the necklace, letting it catch the harsh fluorescent lights. Her eyes fixed on it hungrily, even now. That should have been mine. I earned it, putting up with your pathetic father for 5 years. You earned nothing, I said calmly. You stole it, just like you stole everything else. But you failed to steal the most important thing, our family's integrity. Your precious integrity won't keep you warm at night, she sneered. No, but knowing I stopped you from hurting anyone else will. I stood to leave, but Patricia called out one last time. You think you've won, but Ashley will get out soon. She'll come for what's hers. There's nothing that's hers, I replied. There never was. As I walked out of the prison, I felt Eleanor's presence strongly. I could almost hear her voice. Well done, my dear. The Walker women always protect their own. Today, as I write this, I'm sitting in Eleanor's house. I bought it from the estate with part of the newfound inheritance, unable to let it be converted into Patricia's envisioned luxury condos. I've turned it into exactly what Eleanor would have wanted, a community literacy center on the first floor, with the upper floors as my residence. The library room hosts book clubs and writing workshops. The garden blooms with the roses and rhododendrons Eleanor loved. The pearl necklace rests in a display case in the library room, along with photos of Rose, Eleanor, and my mother. A small placard tells their stories, not of the wealth they preserved, but of the courage they showed, the love they shared, and the legacy they left beyond material possessions. Children from the neighborhood come for story time, sitting in the same sunroom where Eleanor once told me stories. Sometimes I wear the pearls during these sessions, letting the children touch them gently, telling them about the strong women who wore them before me. I tell them that real treasure isn't always money or jewelry. It's knowledge, courage, and the determination to stand up for what's right. Ashley was released last month. She sent another letter, this time through a lawyer, suggesting we could put the past behind us and work together as family should. The letter hinted at her knowledge of other family assets that could be mutually beneficial to explore. Even now, she was scheming, fishing for information about what else Eleanor might have hidden. I had my own lawyer respond with a cease and desist order. Any further contact would be considered harassment and violation of her probation. I haven't heard from her since, though I sometimes see her around Portland, working various minimum wage jobs, her designer clothes replaced by uniforms and name tags. Our eyes met once across a coffee shop. She looked away first. My father has started dating again, this time a fellow doctor at the hospital, someone his own age with her own successful career and no interest in his money. They shared genuine interests, hiking in Forest Park, medical research, quiet dinners where they actually talk to each other. It's nice to see him happy in a real way, not the performed happiness Patricia had orchestrated. Detective Morrison called last week with news that Patricia had been sentenced to 12 years in federal prison. The investigation had uncovered 3 previous husbands, all deceased under questionable circumstances, all having changed their wills in Patricia's favor shortly before their deaths. While she couldn't be prosecuted for those potential crimes due to lack of evidence and statute of limitations, the pattern strengthened the current case against her. Your grandmother saved you, Detective Morrison said. Her documentation, her foresight, without that, Patricia might have succeeded. I think about that often. Eleanor's final gift wasn't just the necklace or even the hidden fortune. It was the proof of Patricia's deception, carefully gathered and preserved. It was the lesson that sometimes the people who claim to be family are the ones who will betray you, while true family protects you even from beyond the grave. The Literacy Center is thriving. We've received grants and donations from people who remember Eleanor's work at the library. One donor, anonymous but generous, funded an entire computer lab. I suspect it's one of Rose's stock holdings finally bearing fruit, a company Eleanor had wisely held onto that has since exploded in value. Sometimes, when I'm alone in the house at night, I hold the pearl necklace up to the light, watching the way each pearl contains its own small universe of luster and depth. I think about Rose, choosing these specific pearls in 1925, never knowing they would outlast wars and depressions, deaths and betrayals. I think about Eleanor, keeping the necklace safe through her own trials, adding layers of protection, both physical and legal. And I think about my mother, who only wore them once that I remember, at her last anniversary dinner with my father, 2 months before the accident. In the photo from that night, she's laughing at something Dad said, her hand touching the pearls at her throat in a gesture I now recognize as my own. She was supposed to inherit them, to be the next guardian of this legacy. Instead, that responsibility skipped a generation, landing with me. I've started writing a book about the Walker women, using Eleanor's journals and Rose's letters as source material. It's not about the pearls or the hidden fortune, though those make for dramatic plot points. It's about resilience, about women protecting each other across generations, about the strength that comes from knowing your history and honoring those who came before. The working title is 3 Strands, referring not just to the necklace, but to the 3 generations of women who shaped my story. Rose, Eleanor, and my mother. 3 strands twisted together, each making the others stronger, creating something beautiful and enduring despite the pressures that tried to break them apart. Last night, I had dinner with Margaret Sinclair, the estate sale coordinator who helped recover the necklace. We've become friends, bonding over our shared love of antiques and family histories. She told me about other families she's seen torn apart by inheritance disputes, about the greed that emerges when money is involved. But your story is different, she said. Your grandmother made sure of that. She protected you even when she couldn't be here to do it herself. She knew Patricia would try something, I replied. She just didn't know what. Or maybe she did, Margaret suggested. Maybe that's why she told you about the safety deposit box, why she hired the private investigator. She was setting up a safety net, making sure that even if Patricia succeeded temporarily, you'd have the resources to fight back. It was true. Every seeming coincidence, the private investigator's report, the hidden key in the necklace, even Mr. Yamamoto knowing about the secret compartment, had been carefully orchestrated by Eleanor. She had played a long game, planning for contingencies she wouldn't live to see. Today marks exactly 1 year since Eleanor's death. I'm wearing the pearls as I write this, sitting at her secretary desk in the sunroom where she first told me they would be mine. The roses are blooming outside, deep red and pink against the green of the garden. The house is quiet except for the grandfather clock ticking in the hallway, the same clock that marked time through Rose's life, Eleanor's, and now mine. This morning, something extraordinary happened. A woman appeared at my door, elderly but elegant, introducing herself as Victoria Pemberton. She had driven up from San Francisco after reading an article about our literacy center in a library journal. But that wasn't why she was really here. "I knew your great-grandmother, Rose," she said, her eyes bright with memories spanning 8 decades. "We were friends at finishing school in San Francisco before she married. I'm 97 years old now, likely the last person alive who knew her as a young woman." I invited her in, my hands shaking as I served tea in Eleanor's china. Victoria studied the photos on the wall, pausing at one of Rose from 1924, a year before she received the pearls. "She was brilliant," Victoria said softly. "Far too intelligent for the times we lived in. She could have been anything. A doctor, a lawyer, a business magnate. Instead, she had to hide her intelligence, pretend to be just another society wife, while secretly managing investments that would sustain her family for generations." Victoria had brought something with her. A leather journal filled with letters Rose had written to her over the years. Letters that revealed a side of my great-grandmother I had never known. Rose had apparently been part of a secret network of women in the 1920s and 1930s who shared financial information, helped each other escape abusive marriages, and quietly built wealth outside their husband's control. "The pearls were a symbol," Victoria explained. "Several of us had similar pieces, valuable enough to serve as emergency funds if needed, but also containing hidden compartments for documents, keys, or other necessities. We called ourselves the Pearl Society, though we never wrote that name down anywhere." The Pearl Society had helped dozens of women over the years, providing safe houses, legal assistance, and financial support. Rose had been one of the founding members, using her hidden assets to fund the network's activities. The stock certificates I had found weren't just family investments. They were the remnants of a much larger portfolio that had been systematically distributed to women in need over the decades. "Your grandmother Eleanor knew about us," Victoria continued. "She was too young to be a member, but Rose told her everything before she died. Eleanor carried on the tradition in her own way, through her library work and quiet assistance to women in difficult situations. I thought about Eleanor's mysterious donations to women's shelters, the time she had taken in strangers who needed temporary refuge, always with vague explanations about helping a library patron or assisting a friend of a friend. It all made sense now. Victoria reached into her purse and pulled out a small velvet box. "I'm the last of the Pearl Society members. I have no children, no one to pass this on to. But when I read about you, about how you recovered your family's necklace and exposed those criminals, I knew you were the right person." Inside the box was a pearl ring, a single black Tahitian pearl surrounded by diamonds. It was stunning, but more importantly, Victoria showed me how it too had a hidden compartment, containing a tiny key. "This opens a safety deposit box in San Francisco," she explained. "Inside are the complete records of the Pearl Society, names of women we helped, financial records, correspondence. Most of the women are gone now, but their descendants might want to know their grandmother's and great-grandmother's true stories. There's also a substantial sum that was meant to continue our work." I was overwhelmed. "Why me?" "Because you've already shown you understand what's important. You didn't just recover your necklace. You stopped predators from harming others. You used your inheritance to create something beneficial for the community. You're already doing what we did, just in a modern way." Victoria stayed for 3 hours, sharing stories about Rose that Eleanor had never known. How Rose had once helped a senator's wife escape with her children in the middle of the night. How she had secretly funded the first female-owned bookstore in Portland. How she had taught herself accounting and investment strategies by listening outside the doors of men's clubs, then applying what she learned better than most professional brokers. Before she left, Victoria said something that's been echoing in my mind all day. "The pearls were never just jewelry, Madison. They were armor. They were weapons. They were lifelines. Every woman who wore them understood that they carried not just beauty, but power. The power to save themselves and others." After Victoria left, I sat with both pieces of jewelry, the necklace and the ring, feeling the weight of inherited responsibility. The Pearl Society might have officially ended with Victoria, but its mission didn't have to. With the resources from Rose's stocks and the Society's remaining funds, I could do so much more than run a small literacy center. I called my lawyer that afternoon and began setting up a foundation, the Pearl Foundation, that would provide emergency funds for women leaving dangerous situations, legal assistance for those fighting predatory family members like Patricia, and educational support for women pursuing financial independence. The Literacy Center would be just the first of many programs. My father stopped by that evening, bringing Chinese takeout from our favorite place on 82nd Avenue. I told him about Victoria's visit, about the Pearl Society, about Rose's secret network. He listened with amazement, occasionally shaking his head in wonder. "Your mother would have loved this," he said finally. "She always said the Walker women were tougher than they looked. She had no idea how right she was." "Did Mom ever tell you anything about the necklace?" I asked. "Any stories from Eleanor that I might not have heard?" Dad thought for a moment. "There was one thing. Right after we got engaged, Eleanor took your mother aside and showed her the necklace. She said something about it being both a gift and a responsibility, that wearing it meant accepting the duty to protect the vulnerable. Your mother thought it was just Eleanor being poetic." But it wasn't poetry. It was literal truth. The necklace came with obligations that transcended generations. That night, I went back to the storage unit where I had found Dad's hidden lockbox. I wanted to search more thoroughly to see if Eleanor had left other clues I might have missed. In a box of Christmas decorations, wrapped in tissue paper from 1987, I found another journal. This one in my mother's handwriting. She had started it after learning she was pregnant with me, intending it to be a record for her daughter. The entries were sporadic but profound, filled with her hopes for my future, her thoughts on family and legacy, and surprisingly, her own investigation into Rose's history. My mother had been researching our family genealogy as a hobby, and she had discovered something Eleanor hadn't known. Rose had a sister, Catherine, who had disappeared from family records in 1926. According to my mother's research, Catherine had been institutionalized by her husband for hysteria after she tried to leave him. Rose had tried to help her, but failed, and that failure had inspired the creation of the Pearl Society. The journal's last entry was dated a week before my mother's death. Madison is 12 now, so bright and curious. Eleanor has started teaching her about the family history, the sanitized version at least. Someday, when she's older, I'll tell her the full truth about the remarkable women she comes from. I'll show her that strength isn't always visible, that sometimes it hides behind pearls and politeness until the moment it's needed most. Reading my mother's words, written for a future conversation we never got to have, broke my heart and filled it simultaneously. She had been preparing to induct me into this legacy, to pass on not just the necklace, but the knowledge and responsibility that came with it. The next morning, I drove to the cemetery where Eleanor, my mother, and now Rose, were buried. I had never noticed before, but each headstone had a small pearl carved into the marble, subtle enough to be overlooked but unmistakable once you knew what to look for. I placed flowers on each grave, telling them about Victoria, about the Pearl Society, about my plans for the foundation. At Rose's grave, the oldest, I found something unexpected. The groundskeeper, an elderly man named Thomas, approached me as I was examining the headstone. "You're Madison Walker," he said. It wasn't a question. "Your grandmother told me you'd come here eventually, really looking, not just visiting." He led me to a small maintenance shed and pulled out a metal box from behind some equipment. "Mrs. Eleanor gave me this about 5 years ago, said to give it to you if you ever came asking questions about Rose's grave, said you'd know when you were ready." Inside the box was a map of the cemetery with several graves marked, all with dates between 1920 and 1975. There was also a list of names and brief notes. Margaret Thompson, helped 1934, domestic violence, relocated to Seattle. And Sarah Chen, helped 1938, forced marriage, funded nursing school, and dozens more. These were the women the Pearl Society had helped, many of whom had chosen to be buried in the same cemetery as Rose, their graves forming a constellation of saved lives around their savior. Thomas, it turned out, had been quietly maintaining these graves for decades on Eleanor's instructions, paid from a fund she had established. Many had no other visitors, their families never knowing the true story of how they had escaped and survived. "Your grandmother said these women were heroes," Thomas told me. "Said they deserved to be remembered properly, even if nobody knew their stories." I spent the rest of the day visiting each marked grave, reading the names, calculating their ages, imagining their stories. Some had lived long lives, dying in their 80s or 90s. Others had died young, but free. All had been given a second chance by Rose and the Pearl Society. That evening, I received an unexpected call from Ashley. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity won. "I'm not calling to ask for anything," she said quickly, as if afraid I'd hang up. "I'm calling to warn you. Mom's made friends in prison, people with connections on the outside. She's obsessed with that necklace, with getting revenge. She talks about it constantly." "Why are you telling me this?" I asked, suspicious. "Because I've had a lot of time to think," Ashley replied, her voice different from the entitled tone I remembered. "Working minimum wage, living in a studio apartment, watching my old friends pretend they don't know me. It's been educational. I realized Mom raised me to be just like her, a parasite looking for the next host. I don't want to be that anymore." I didn't trust her transformation, but I thanked her for the warning and increased security at both the house and the literacy center. Sure enough, 2 weeks later, someone tried to break into the house while I was at work. The security system alerted the police, and they caught the intruder, a known associate of one of Patricia's prison friends. The attempted break-in led to additional charges against Patricia and an extension of her sentence. It also convinced me to take more serious precautions. I had the necklace and ring placed in a specialized vault with multiple authentication requirements. I also began varying my routines, installed more comprehensive security systems, and took self-defense classes. But I refused to live in fear. The Pearl Society women had faced greater dangers with fewer resources. I had advantages they could never have imagined: legal protections, financial independence, and a support network that didn't have to hide in the shadows. 6 months have passed since Victoria's visit. The Pearl Foundation is now officially established, with 3 full-time staff members and a board of directors that includes Margaret Sinclair, Detective Morrison, who retired from the police force to focus on helping victims of fraud, and surprisingly, Mrs. Chen from the Library Foundation, who revealed that her own grandmother had been helped by the Pearl Society in 1942. We've helped 17 women so far, providing emergency housing, legal funds, relocation assistance, and educational support. Each case is different, but the need is the same. Women trapped by circumstance, needing just enough help to break free and rebuild. One of our first cases was a young woman named Emma, whose stepmother had stolen her inheritance while she was in college, leaving her unable to finish her degree. The parallels to my own story were uncanny, though Emma's situation was worse. She had no grandmother's foresight to protect her, no hidden documents to prove the theft. We funded her legal battle and her education. She graduated last month with a degree in social work and now volunteers with the foundation. Another was Linda, a 60-year-old widow whose late husband's children were trying to force her out of her home through legal manipulation. We connected her with attorneys who specialized in elder law and helped her secure her rights. She now hosts a support group for widows at the Literacy Center, sharing resources and strategies for protecting themselves. Each woman we help becomes part of a modern Pearl society, not bound by secret symbols or hidden compartments, but by shared experience and mutual support. They attend each other's court dates, celebrate victories, and provide the kind of understanding that only comes from similar struggles. The Literacy Center has evolved too. Beyond the reading programs and computer classes, we now offer financial literacy workshops, legal rights seminars, and self-defense training. The Victorian house that Eleanor preserved has become exactly what she would have wanted. A sanctuary and a school, a place where knowledge becomes power. My father has become one of our biggest supporters, not just financially but personally. He volunteers as a medical advisor, helping women understand their health rights and connecting them with appropriate care. His experience with Patricia has made him a powerful advocate for others who've been manipulated by predatory partners. I was lucky, he told me recently. I had you to expose the truth, resources to rebuild. Most people don't have that. Last month, we received our largest donation yet, $2 million from an anonymous source. The only clue was a note. For Rose, Eleanor, and all the unnamed women who helped others find freedom. Continue their work. I suspect it might be from another descendant of the Pearl Society, someone who discovered their own family connection to this hidden history. With this donation, we're expanding beyond Portland. We're creating a network of Pearl Foundation chapters in cities across Oregon and Washington, each adapted to local needs but united in purpose. The Pearl necklace has become our unofficial symbol, not because everyone needs to know its history, but because those who do understand its significance immediately recognize kindred spirits. I've also started working with historians at Portland State University to document the Pearl Society's history properly. We're conducting oral histories with elderly women who remember stories their mothers and grandmothers told, piecing together a narrative that was deliberately kept fragmented for safety. It's slow work, but important. These women deserve to have their courage recorded, even if it's a century late. The research has uncovered remarkable stories. One Pearl Society member, Dorothy Huang, used her sewing business as a front to help women escape abusive situations, hiding them in delivery trucks among bolts of fabric. Another, Betty Volkov, a nurse at Good Samaritan Hospital, would admit women under false diagnoses to give them safe haven while arrangements were made for their escape. Each story reinforces what Victoria told me. The pearls were never just jewelry. They were symbols of a sisterhood that transcended social class, race, and religion, united by the understanding that women's safety and freedom required collective action and mutual support. Recently, I discovered that Eleanor had been writing a book about Rose and the Pearl Society in her final years. I found the manuscript in a safety deposit box at yet another bank, along with photos and documents supporting her research. She had interviewed dozens of women in the 1990s and early 2000s, capturing stories that would have otherwise been lost. The manuscript is incomplete. Eleanor's health declined before she could finish it. But there's enough there to understand the full scope of what Rose and her contemporaries accomplished. By Eleanor's count, the Pearl Society helped over 200 women between 1925 and 1965, when the last original member died. I'm working on completing Eleanor's book, combining her research with what I've learned from Victoria and our ongoing historical work. It will be published next year, with proceeds going to the Pearl Foundation. The dedication will read, "For the women who wore pearls as armor, who hid strength behind silk gloves, who saved others when they couldn't save themselves. Your secrets are safe, but your legacy lives on." Yesterday brought an unexpected development. A lawyer representing Patricia contacted me with a proposal. Patricia, now 3 years into her sentence, claims to have information about other items my grandmother had hidden. Items she learned about through my father's sleep talking and private conversations she overheard. She's willing to trade this information for a letter to the parole board supporting early release. I met with Detective Morrison to discuss it. She was skeptical but curious. Patricia's a manipulator, she reminded me, but she's also desperate. She might actually know something. The lawyer arranged a video call from the prison. Patricia looked older, grayer, the harsh fluorescent lighting doing her no favors, but her eyes still held that calculating gleam I remembered. "Madison," she began, trying for warmth but achieving only artificiality. "But thank you for agreeing to speak with me." "What do you want, Patricia?" "Direct as always," she said with a bitter smile. "Fine. Your grandmother had another safety deposit box at Columbia River Bank. She mentioned it once when she thought she was alone with David, but I was listening from the hallway. She said it contained something she called the insurance policy. I kept my face neutral, though my pulse quickened. Columbia River Bank had been bought out years ago, but old safety deposit boxes were usually transferred to the purchasing bank. Why should I believe you? I asked. Because I have nothing left to lose, Patricia replied. My daughter won't speak to me. Your father divorced me and took everything the court would allow. I'll be in here for at least 7 more years without parole. This information is the only currency I have left. And you want me to support your parole application in exchange? Not support, she clarified. Just write a letter saying you've forgiven me, that you believe I've learned from my mistakes. It doesn't have to be true. Just convincing enough for the parole board. I told her I'd consider it and ended the call. That afternoon, I went to First Tech Federal Credit Union, which had acquired Columbia River Bank in 2018. After explaining the situation and providing Eleanor's death certificate and my power of attorney documents, they searched their records. There was indeed a safety deposit box under Eleanor's name, paid through 2030. When I opened it, I found 3 items. A USB drive labeled insurance, a manila envelope marked for the authorities if needed, and surprisingly, another pearl. A single, loose Baroque pearl wrapped in tissue paper with a note. The 4th strand, the one that was never made. The USB drive contained encrypted files that required a password. After trying several combinations, I remembered something Eleanor used to say. Knowledge is the real pearl. The password was Knowledge Pearl 1932, 1932 being the year Eleanor was born. The files were explosive. Patricia had been running scams long before she met my father. The documents included evidence of her involvement in an art forgery ring in the 1990s, tax evasion spanning decades, and most shockingly, proof that her first husband's death was not the accident it appeared to be. She had tampered with his heart medication while slowly poisoning him with small doses of antifreeze. Eleanor had hired not 1 but 3 different private investigators over the years, building a comprehensive file that could put Patricia away for life. The note with the files explained that Eleanor had been waiting for the right moment to act, but her health had declined too quickly. She had hidden this insurance to protect me and my father if Patricia ever became truly dangerous. I immediately took everything to Detective Morrison. Within hours, Patricia was facing new charges including attempted murder and tax fraud. Her plea for early parole was not just denied, she was transferred to maximum security pending trial for the additional crimes. Ashley called me that night, not angry but resigned. She really was evil, wasn't she? She said quietly. All these years, I thought she was just ambitious, maybe a little shady, but she was genuinely evil. Yes, I agreed, she was. The pearl you found, Ashley said. The loose one. Do you know what it means? I admitted I didn't. Mom told me once when she was drunk that Eleanor had mentioned having 4 strands of pearls made from a larger collection, but only 3 were ever strung. She was obsessed with finding that 4th strand. She thought it was another necklace worth a fortune. But looking at the single Baroque pearl, I understood what Eleanor had really meant. The 4th strand wasn't a necklace. It was the next generation. Me. And now, the women we were helping through the foundation. We were the living pearls, continuing the work the previous strands had started. That revelation led me to another discovery. The Baroque pearl, when examined under magnification, had a tiny hole drilled in it. Not for stringing, but as another hiding place. Inside was a micro SD card containing a video message from Eleanor, recorded just weeks before her death. In the video, Eleanor sat in the same sunroom where I now work, autumn light filtering through the windows. She looked frail but determined. My dearest Madison, she began, if you're watching this, then you've discovered Patricia's true nature and taken appropriate action. I'm sorry I couldn't protect you and your father myself, but I knew you would be strong enough when the time came. The pearl you're holding represents you and your generation. Baroque pearls are considered irregular, imperfect by traditional standards, but they're also unique, impossible to replicate, and often more valuable to those who understand their rarity. You, my dear, are my Baroque pearl, shaped by unusual circumstances, but all the more precious for it. I've left you more than money or jewelry. I've left you a mission, should you choose to accept it. The Pearl Society never really ended. It just went underground, waiting for someone to revive it. In the basement of the house, behind the wine rack, you'll find a hidden room. Rose had it built during Prohibition, ostensibly for storing illegal alcohol, but really as a safe room for women hiding from dangerous men. That room contains the complete archives of the Pearl Society, photographs, letters, financial records, and most importantly, a list of descendants who might want to continue the work. Some of them have been waiting for decades for someone to reach out, to restart what their grandmothers began. I trust you to decide what to do with this information. The world has changed since Rose's time, but the need hasn't. Women still need protection, support, and sometimes a secret network of sisters who understand that pearls can be both beautiful and bulletproof. All my love, Grandma Eleanor. That night, I went to the basement with my father. Together, we moved the wine rack, revealing a door painted to look like part of the wall. The room beyond was larger than expected, climate-controlled and lined with filing cabinets. It was a treasure trove of women's history that had been deliberately hidden from the world. We found photographs of Pearl Society meetings, disguised as garden parties and book clubs. letters in code describing escape plans and financial transfers, ledgers showing how Rose and her contemporaries had built a shadow economy to support women's independence. And yes, a list of descendants. Hundreds of names with contact information, some updated as recently as 5 years ago by Eleanor. Among the papers, I found something that made my father gasp. A letter from my mother to Eleanor, dated a month before the accident. In it, she described her suspicions about Patricia, whom my father had just started dating. She had been investigating Patricia on her own, finding some of the same information Eleanor would later uncover. The letter ended with, "If something happens to me, protect David and Madison from her." The accident, my father whispered. What if it wasn't? We'll never know for certain. The car accident that killed my mother was ruled a mechanical failure. Brake lines that supposedly corroded naturally. But knowing what we now know about Patricia, the timing seems too convenient. She had been dating my father for only 3 months, but my mother's investigation threatened to expose her before she could secure her position. This discovery has changed everything. The Pearl Foundation is no longer just about helping women escape bad situations. It's about justice for those who couldn't escape. We've hired a team of investigators to look into cold cases that might be connected to Patricia or others like her. We're building a database of predatory individuals who target vulnerable women, sharing information with law enforcement and potential victims. The network Victoria mentioned is growing. I've reached out to names on Eleanor's list, and the response has been overwhelming. Daughters, granddaughters, and great-granddaughters of Pearl Society members have been waiting for this call. We're building something unprecedented, an international network of women's protection that operates both in the shadows and in the light. We've established Pearl Foundation chapters in Seattle, San Francisco, Los Angeles, Denver, and Chicago. Each city has its own stories of hidden helpers, women who worked secretly to protect others. We're documenting these stories, creating an archive that will ensure their courage is never forgotten. The Literacy Center in Eleanor's house has become our unofficial headquarters. The hidden room is now a secure meeting space where women can speak freely about their situations without fear of being overheard or recorded. We've added modern security while preserving the historical significance of the space. Last week, we held our first official Pearl Society reunion. 43 women attended, ranging in age from 22 to 89. Some were descendants of original members. Others were women we'd helped who wanted to give back. All understood that they were part of something larger than themselves. Victoria Pemberton, now 98, gave the keynote address. Despite her age, her voice was strong as she spoke about Rose and the original Pearl Society. They called us hysterical when we wanted to vote. They called us unstable when we wanted to work. They called us unnatural when we wanted to control our own money. So we stopped asking for permission. We created our own economy, our own justice system, our own protection network. We hid it all behind pearls and propriety, behind tea parties and charity lunches. We saved each other because no one else would. Today, you don't have to hide as much as we did. But the work continues. Every woman in an abusive relationship, every daughter cheated of her inheritance, every mother fighting for her children, they need what we can provide. Not charity, but solidarity. Not pity, but power. The room erupted in applause. Looking around at these women, lawyers, doctors, teachers, students, survivors, I saw the fourth strand Eleanor had envisioned. We were irregular pearls, each shaped by our own pressures and struggles, but stronger when strung together. Ashley attended the reunion. She's genuinely changed, working now as an advocate for prisoners' rights, especially for women who were manipulated into crimes by partners or family members. She understands that she was both perpetrator and victim, shaped by Patricia's influence from childhood. While I'll never fully trust her, I've come to respect her transformation. I spent my whole life thinking pearls were just pretty decorations. She told the group. Things to wear to impress others. I never understood they could be armor until I lost everything and had to rebuild myself from nothing. The Pearl Foundation now manages assets worth over $30 million, thanks to Rose's investments, the Pearl Society's legacy funds, and modern donations. We've helped 127 women in the past year alone. Our legal team has won 17 cases against predatory family members and partners. Our safe houses have provided shelter to countless women and children fleeing dangerous situations. But the real victory is the network itself. Women who were strangers a year ago now check on each other daily. They share job opportunities, provide childcare during court dates, offer spare rooms to those starting over. They've become the family that blood relatives failed to be. The pearl necklace still sits in its vault, but I wear it more often now. To foundation events, court victories, celebrations of women's courage. Each time I clasp it around my neck, I feel the weight of 4 generations of women who refused to be victims, who turned their pain into power, their losses into legacy. Patricia remains in maximum security, facing life in prison for the attempted murder of her first husband. New evidence suggests she may have been involved in other deaths, including possibly my mother's. She still writes to me occasionally, letters full of manipulation and false remorse. I forward them unopened to the investigators building cases against her. My father has found peace in his relationship with Dr. Sarah Martinez. They're planning a small wedding next spring, with the reception to be held at the Literacy Center. Sarah understands our family's complicated history and has become a strong supporter of the Foundation's work. She even discovered that her own grandmother had been helped by the Pearl Society in 1948, making her part of our extended network of gratitude. The book about the Pearl Society is nearly complete. Publishers are competing for the rights, sensing the powerful story of women's hidden resistance. But I'm being careful, ensuring that any publication protects the privacy of living descendants while honoring the courage of those who've passed. One publisher offered a particularly compelling proposal. They want to create a series, with each book focusing on a different city's Pearl Society network. The research has revealed that Rose's group was just one of many similar organizations across the country, all operating independently but with surprisingly similar methods. The pearls, it seems, were a universal symbol of hidden strength. As I write this conclusion to my story, I'm sitting in the hidden room Rose built nearly a century ago. The walls are now lined with photos. Rose, Eleanor, my mother, Victoria, and dozens of other women who contributed to this legacy. Their eyes seem to watch approvingly as I work on plans to expand the foundation internationally. Next month, I'm traveling to London to meet with women's organizations there. They've heard about our work and want to establish a British Pearl Society network. After that, I'll visit Tokyo, where a group of Japanese women have been inspired by our story to create their own support system. The pearls are going global, carrying their message of resilience and resistance to women everywhere. The single Baroque pearl that Eleanor left me now hangs on a simple chain around my neck, a daily reminder that irregularity is not imperfection, it's individuality. It reminds me that the fourth strand isn't complete yet, may never be complete. Each woman we help adds another pearl to an infinite string of solidarity. Sometimes I dream about my mother, Eleanor, and Rose. In these dreams, they're all young, sitting together in the sunroom, wearing their pearls and planning their revolution. They look up when I enter, smiling as if they've been waiting for me. "Did we do well?" Rose asks in these dreams. "You did perfectly," I always answer. "You saved us all." And that's the truth. They saved us not with the money or the jewelry, though those helped. They saved us by showing that women's strength doesn't require permission or recognition. It doesn't need to be loud or visible. Sometimes it hides in plain sight, behind pearls and politeness, waiting for the moment when it's needed most. If you're reading this story and recognize yourself in it, if you're trapped, threatened, or simply tired of being undervalued, know that you're not alone. The Pearl Society may have been secret once, but its descendants are everywhere, ready to help. We wear different faces, come from different backgrounds, but we understand the weight of pearls and the strength required to carry them. My name is Madison Walker. I am the keeper of 3 strands of pearls and the creator of a 4th. I am my great-grandmother's courage, my grandmother's wisdom, my mother's interrupted dreams, and my own determination combined. I am proof that inheritance isn't just about money or property. It's about the obligation to use privilege for purpose, to transform pain into power, to ensure that the women who saved us are never forgotten. The pearl necklace that started this story still exists, still gleams with the same luster that caught Rose's eye in 1925. But it's no longer the most valuable thing I inherited. The most valuable inheritance was the knowledge that women have always saved each other, sometimes in secret, sometimes at great cost, but always with the understanding that solidarity is the only reliable safety net in a world that too often fails to protect its daughters. Patricia thought she was stealing jewelry. She had no idea she was actually triggering the revival of something far more valuable, a network of women's protection that had been dormant but never dead, waiting for someone to discover the key hidden in a strand of pearls. Thank you for reading my story. If it resonated with you, please share it. Somewhere out there's a woman who needs to know that the pearls exist, that the network endures, that help is available for those brave enough to seek it. She needs to know that she can be both beautiful and bulletproof, that she can hide her strength until the moment she needs it most, and that when that moment comes, she won't be alone. The Pearl Society lives on, not in secret anymore, but in the open, proud of our irregular pearls and the pressure that created them. We are the 4th strand, and we are unbreakable.